Hi people, welcome to a new price comparison guide for China this time. So it's comparing all the China armies and the prices of different units. I'll post a link for this table in the description. So we'll start with the Red Guard or the minigunner. So with Nuke you can get 2 Red Guards for 350. Whereas China you can get 2 for 300, so it's slightly more expensive for the Nuke. Even more expensive for the tank at 375, and you can get 1 minigunner for 350 for the infantry general. So when you're China, often you'll be facing a load of Humvees, and Red Guards are a good counter for Humvees, but you'll be making them from the troop crawler rather than from your barracks. So you really only want to be building Red Guard from your barracks when you're just to capture oil, if you're not going to make a troop crawler. Next unit, Tank Hunter. So we'll start with the vanilla China on the right side. So we've got 300 standard, 300 for the infantry general, and then when you don't want to be making them really, or as little as often, is with tanks, the 375. So if you build a helix full of 5 tank hunters, these extra 75 quickly adds up to much more expensive than the other Chinas. So and the same with the Nuke at 350. So usually you only want to build in tank hunters when you're doing a bunker, and you just want to put one or two tank hunters just to garrison the sides on like Tournament Desert or any map, just to scare the enemy off, rather than going really heavy on them because they're more expensive. So we've got a Hacker. So with the infantry and the vanilla China, so they're the same price, 625. With infantry, obviously the Hackers are stealth, so they're a lot more stronger, and I think they can disable units and stuff quicker as well. And because they're invisible, it's hard to stop that from happening. For Nuke, they're actually the same price at 625, and for tank they're 780. So this is why when you're tank you never really want to be making Hackers, because a full internet center with Hackers takes, I think someone said, 7.5 minutes or somewhere around there to pay off for itself, never mind make a profit. So most 0-hour games, if you look, actually only take around 7 or 7.5 minutes from start to finish. So it's kind of, unless you're expecting a huge long game, you really don't want to be making Hackers as tank, like, ever. Just pour it into units and finish that game before you end up facing against the other Hackers or the black markets or the supply drop zones. Just finish the game before it gets to that stage. A case of Lotus. So for infantry and China, again it's the same price, 1500. The hotkey for Black Lotus is B. Unless you're infantry, then the hotkey is S. It's a handy little thing, just to click on your barracks and just press one of those 2 keys. Nice, get your Lotus out nice and quick. It's slightly more expensive for the Nuke at 1600, and even more expensive at 1875 for the tank. Lotus is good for all armies, especially infantry, because it captures so quick, and stealing cash is a good option as well. Always steal cash from your enemy rather than capturing the supply, because if you go to capture the supply and he sells it, you've got nothing. But if you steal cash, you've taken 1,000 out of your enemy and you've got 1,000 in your own bank. So that's a difference of 2,000. So you've changed the balance of the game by $2,000. So it's better to steal cash. So Battlemaster for China is 800. You never really want to build in that unit. It's probably one of the most useless units in the game. For Nuke, they're also 800. Decent unit for Nuke to make because of the explosion. And for tank they are 700, so cheaper. That's why tanks like Hackers are more expensive, because it's got strong tanks early on, and you can get the upgrade to Vet 2 for them. And they're very strong. They can even take down like Nuke Overlords, and if you've got 2 or 3 of them, they can take down Nuke Overlords. So troop crawler is all the same price at 1400, apart from the infantry, because they get the assault troop crawler, which is full of minigunners, which are by far stronger than the Red Guards at 2400. If you're making that from the offset from the early game, you can basically only afford that before you can, and you have to wait before you build a barracks, and you have to wait before you build a bunker and all that stuff. So off we got Gatling tank. Again, the tank is 100 cheaper at 700 than the other 2 Chinas. At Nuke was 800, and Vanilla China is 800. Dragon tank is again cheaper for the tank. at 700, so you can be producing units from your 2 war factories nice and quick all the way through the game because they're only 700. For infantry, they're 900. Actually, that's quite expensive. China 800 and Nuke 800. So Nuke and China always tend to be in the middle. Tank always tends to be the cheapest because that's what the general's called, and infantry is actually 900. Okay, moving on to Outpost. This is where it changes for tanks, and now China Vanilla is the cheapest, and it's got a 2 there because you get 2 rockets from it. Then for the tank, it's actually 950, so 150 more expensive, and that's because it contains infantry, and tank is not an infantry general, it's a tank general, so it wants to be only building tanks, so the Outpost is more expensive. So you tend to want to be making Gatlings, Battlemasters, and dragging tanks with tank rather than doing the Outpost. Just mix a few outposts in if you really have to, if you, for example, against stealth. Nuke again is kind of in the middle at 900, and infantry at 1000, and that's fine it being the most expensive because it can hold loads of tank hunters, and it starts off with 3 Vet 1 rockets, so they're nice and strong, so they can take down pretty much any other tank. Inferno cannons, so tank doesn't have any ranged units, it only has short range units, which is why in the long game it's a bad general as well, not to mention the hackers. So Nuke and China again the same price at 900, and infantry at 1100. Cool thing about the infantry general, even though they're more expensive, so the outposts that you build, they give off the speaker tower bonus, and if you upgrade that to subliminal messaging from your propaganda center for $500, 2 inferno cannons by those outposts can actually create a firestorm. You don't need 3 or 4, you can just use 2, and if you upgrade to black napalm, those 2 inferno cannons can do huge damage. They can take down buildings in the center of Tournament Desert, they can take down bunkers, everything, so they're really good. It does work for the other generals as well, so you can get the speaker tower on the Overlord and get the subliminal messaging, and that'll work too, rather than going for the nuke cannon, which people tend to do. So Ecm Tanks, so pretty much the same across the board, 800, apart from infantry, which is 900, not that much difference. So Overlord is pretty much again same across the board. Obviously infantry doesn't have it because it can only build outposts and assault troop crawlers. Tank is at 1900. I tend to never really or very rarely build Overlords as tank because they are so slow. Yeah, they're so strong, but they're so slow. And if you're against the GLA, the Jarman can just pick them off, and because they're so slow, he'll probably pick them all off before they get into his base. Versus Nuke, the Nuke Overlords can just run circles around them. The time I tend to build them is sometimes versus a laser general when they're going heavy on the... If you've secured the sides and they've gone heavy on Vs and laser tanks, you can sometimes mix in tank Overlords and get the Gatling on the top of them, and they're very strong. But again, they're slow though, so... China Vanilla, they're also slow. I don't think they're quite as slow as tank, maybe they are about the same speed. But China are 2000, and when you definitely want to be building them is for Nuke, because they're 2000 and they're super quick. They can race around the map, and they create the nuclear explosion as well. If you run into some Vs or something, that'll do huge damage, or even tanks. Okay, Nuke Cannon, same across the board at 1600. So the little asterisk means that you need a tech building, so obviously you need the propaganda center for all the generals. Tank doesn't have any range, hence why it's cancelled out. And the little plus means you need a general's point, so the nuke general obviously gets the nuke cannon for free, but the other generals you have to actually use that from the general's tree. You have to spend 1 point. MiG, this is quite an important one, so whenever you're infantry or China Vanilla, MiGs are nice and cheap at 1200, and you want to be building MiGs when you are those armies, when you need them. Tank, you can still do MiGs, because the 1600 each though quickly adds up that price about how much they are. Never mind you have to spend 1000 on an armor upgrade, 1000 on an airfield, and 2,000 on the black napalm. If you lose a full airfield of MiGs, that's a real expensive loss. It's close to like 10k or even more. And nuke 1400. Nukes MiGs are pretty useless unless you're killing outposts from infantry, and they're also pretty useless against everything else unless you get to the super weapon and you make the nuke cannon. Sorry, not the nuke cannon. The nuclear MiGs upgrade, nuke MiGs. In which case they are then super strong, and that's when you want to be building them. But very rarely do games get to that stage, only usually on large maps. So helix, so if you're China and infantry, that's when you want to be making helixes. Nuke is also good, but it's 250 more expensive, and now that added to the price of the tank hunters, which are $50 more expensive, times 5, because you need 5 units to put in there. That quickly adds up to a lot more expensive than the infantry and the China. And again, for tank it's even more expensive, so when you tank you very rarely want to be making helixes because they cost 2,000 from the offset, plus your 400 for the bunker, that's 2,400, and then 375 times 5, which can't bother doing the maths, but that's quite a bit. And then by the time you add all that together, that one helix, if that gets shot down, then it's a huge loss. You want to be making ground units really as tank. Yeah, so I'll put the link for this in the description. If you've got any questions or anything, leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and share my videos if you would. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.